The kick and bass combination, especially in EDM, melodic techno, progressive house, or any of the other dance subgenres, is probably one of the most important things to get just right. Now, a lot of it has to do with the type of kick that you choose, how long the kick is, and how your bass actually interacts with that particular kick. So we'll be covering 4 areas that we can look at to improve our chances to make that low end sound nice and tight. In this example, I've got a general deep kick from one of my sample packs. It sounds like this. Nothing too special. But what you will see here is that I've got this in audio, so you can actually see how long the tail of the kick or the thump of the kick actually is. As you can see, it's quite long in that first hit. So we need to make a decision. You either want to have a longer kick to carry more of that sub, or you want to have a shorter kick and a longer sub bass to carry more of that sub noise. So it really depends on the type of song that you're going for. For this example, what we'll do is we'll look at having a bass line that fits in nicely with this kick, and then I'll show you actually how to tweak it in a way that makes it sit correctly within your mix. So what we'll do is we'll lay down a simple pattern and see if we can come up with a way to make the sound kind of groovy, but also show you exactly what I mean and how to actually make the bass and the sub sit nicely together. I think something like this should be fine. Let's have a listen. Yep, that's going to work quite well. So let's crop that and we'll just loop this over and over. And now if we listen to the whole thing together, as you can see there quite clearly, the sub bass and the kick are just drowning each other out. It's sounding extremely muddy. And you can even see it here, where you can see that from the first initial, on the second beat, the kick and the bass are actually struggling for the same components within the frequency range. There's a couple of things that we can do to solve this. The first thing I usually do before I even start touching things like sidechain compression, which is probably what most producers would actually do, is actually look at the relationship of the kick with the bass. So for this particular pattern that I've created, I will probably look at reducing the size of the kick, making the kick a lot shorter, maybe something about there. So listen to see how this would sound. Let's delete all these guys here. And we'll reduce this pattern here. So now we've got a much shorter kick with the bass line. And right there, your kick and your bass are already sounding a hell of a lot cleaner. Now, granted, there is some elements in here which were still clashing, as you can see here from your kick and where the note of your bass actually hits. But we'll get to that in a minute. Now, you can do this a couple of ways to actually check how well your kick and your bass are actually sitting. You can put an audio channel into resampling mode, and you can actually just record the clip, and it will show you the relationship of how the kick is actually sitting with the bass line. Now, if we just have a look at that small pattern there, we can see the kick is sitting here, the bass line is coming to the back, and you can actually see the second hit here. But if you have a look at this particular kick sample here, you can actually see some of that bass line is actually bleeding through into that kick. So another way to check it is by, if you've got this tool, just put volume shaper on, set it to 1 bar, put it on your master channel, and have a look at how the waves actually sit together. So that's another easy, quick way to do it if you don't want to record it. Okay, the second part of this. So let's fix that particular bass line to now fit in a lot nicer into the kick drum. Now we can do this with two tools. I'll show you both ways. The first one with a native Ableton tool, and you can do this with any DAW, is just grab your compressor, which is not this one because I've got this one as a trial version, so get rid of that. So grab your Ableton compressor, put it on your bass channel, open up the tab of Sidechain, and sidechain it to your kick. Now, you can do a couple of things here. If you grab the EQ, just grab an EQ8 for these. We'll solo the kick. We can see that the kick is roughly hitting around 47, 48. So it's an F sharp kick. So let's get rid of that. It'll give us a good idea. So what you can do back here in your compressor, you can actually just put the EQ on and set the frequency about 48. So the original transient of the kick will actually trigger the compressor to start working. And then set the compressor to taste. Now if we run them both together, this is before. You can actually see it's got a lot more groove. So that's one way of doing it. The second way of doing it is you can do it with the paid option. And this is the way I've actually been doing it for a long time now because I just really love this tool. You can use something like Kickstart 2, which is an improvement of Kickstart 1, with the added function that you can actually look at sidechaining the signal into the actual kickstart from the kick. So previously you had to do this with volume shaper, and you had to use like a MIDI channel to do it. Now it's real easy because you can do it directly from the audio. So what you do is just put the kickstart on your on your bass channel, sidechain it to your kick, and when you play them together, you will see now we've got the bass ducking completely out of where the kick actually hits. Now we can probably bring this in a little bit closer, and this is actually going to give you a much tighter sound. Now another thing you can do is, depending on how high your bass range is, we're obviously working at quite a low octave here, you can actually set the band filter. So this basically will determine how much the sidechain will start working from a particular frequency. But for this particular example, we just leave it as it is. Now that we've got those two things working correctly, what else can we do? Well, we can add some saturation to the bass line to work on the second and third harmonics, to liven it up a bit and actually hear it on the smaller systems. So let's just get a Ableton saturator here. There we go. And what I'll do is also put an EQ8 here so you can see what this sounds like. So at the moment, you can see these second, third order harmonics working here with the bass line. Now if we were to add the saturator, bring this down a bit, it's actually giving it a perceived loudness without actually increasing the volume whatsoever. So this is another great way to actually make it punch through into your bus. So this is a couple of quick ways that you can actually get your bass and your kick working nicely together. Now there is other things that you can actually do to bring up your low end a bit more. You could run something like Neutron, Neutron 3 onto your kick. Now this is a little trick that I actually learned from Protoculture, so shout out to him. He's a great mastering engineer. He's done a lot of my work. But what you can do is actually put a compressor on your kick channel. And the great thing about this tool is we can look at actually compressing the kick in two different parts. So we can just take the initial peaks here. Let's reduce the attack a little bit. Reduce the release and bring down the ratio. Make up a little bit, just a tiny little bit there. And then we can compress the thump of the kick, so the body of the kick, a lot more. Bring down the ratio. So bring up the ratio a little bit more. Bring down the attack, so faster attack. And this is actually going to make the kick actually punch through a lot more, as you can hear from there. Just bring that kick down a little bit in volume. Now, if you needed to add some extra punch to that particular kick, you could actually add a transient shaper. Put the sustain up a little bit. And that kick is really punching through. Now the last thing we'll do is probably just add a limiter there, just to really squash that kick. So you can hear this is actually sounding quite tight, and I haven't even done a lot of processing together. So these are a couple of ways that you can actually get your kick and your bass to actually sit quite nicely with each other. The last thing I'll probably do is then look at maybe rolling off some of the unwanted low end. Because this will actually give you a lot more headroom when you go to master. One last step is I always make sure that I have my sub and my kick in mono. For the purposes of this sub, because we do have some frequencies here around the 255, what you could do is you could actually just bass mono anything from 180, which will then allow you some more stereo width in the upper ranges of the frequency. One last trick that you can do, and this is a little bit of a bonus tip when it comes to things like melodic techno and melodic house, is you can actually send this this particular bassline to an auxiliary track. There's two ways of doing it. You can send it to a Nox track if you're going to be running a few more instruments, which is probably the easiest way to do it, or you can actually group them. So I'll show you both ways of doing it. So if we just send some of this signal, and as you can hear, it's actually giving it a little bit more stereo width. Now, one thing you can do is actually clean this up with an EQ. So we're basically saying anything above 255 hertz uses delay effect. And you can use this to taste. So yeah guys, this is a very quick tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. It's just a few tips and tricks that you can use to bring your low end to life. Something else you could do as a last sort of trick is actually group these two guys together and put a glue compressor on it, just to actually glue everything together. So 2 to 1. And that is a very, very nice sounding kick and bass combination. If you enjoy this, make sure you give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks guys.